Now, if you haven't heard of the Obsidian Summit, you probably haven't followed along in my old era RotMG videos, which means that you should check them out, right? Nonetheless, the dungeon is meant as a batshit endgame dungeon, as Lord Sean put it. The creator ATrapper recommends to use a character above 6'8" because it's going to be difficult. And it's meant for players from 8 to 16 players, where 8 is the most difficult and 16 the average player could compete. Now, how would one enter the dungeon? So, you have to defeat the defenders of the summit, Nurse Pass, and Davidius. There's lore in regards to all the characters in this, and there's a story behind the dungeon that you can check out in the lore section on the document that is released. I will have it in the description if you want to check it out yourself. But we will mainly focus on the monsters, the drops, and the damage, and the phases, and the bosses, and all that. So the defenders, as mentioned, are event guards that spawn either in highlands or the mountains. Nurse Pass is the least dangerous of these two. Davidius has the highest damage. And they will spawn next to each other and wait until they're provoked. Now, the boss battle is fairly complicated, but in the rough, it's weirdly alike the statues. Either one of them attacks you and chases the player really aggressively. It is mentioned that Nurse Pass is the powerhouse, standing in the back and shooting out shotguns on either side, whereas Davidius is more as a machine gun. Davidius is also sort of a glass cannon since he only has 50,000 HP compared to the 75,000 that Nurse Pass has. Not that it's a lot of damage since these bosses haven't been scaled to the HP scaling function. It's only respectively 15 and 25,000 health you have to hit them down to get them into their next phases. So, as said, when Nurse Pass has reached 50,000 and Davidius 35,000 HP, they will start spawning minions. In this phase, Nurse Pass goes really aggressive and starts attacking the player with bombs and start chasing it, where Davidius is just staying in the back throwing bombs. The bomb attack is also his most powerful, so this is to watch out for. The minions themselves aren't that dangerous since they only have ranging from 2,500 to 4,000 HP and only hit for 50 HP. The empowered defender is the only one to have a debuff, which is bleeding for 2 seconds. The minion that sticks out is the burning defender, which has an attack of 100. So now, you have to kill one of these defenders before you can push them into the rage phase, and if Nurse Pass dies, it's much like Nut, where it's just double speed of attack and really fast pace speed. Yeah, what the fuck. And Davidius will have an attack much similar to Gep, where he will stand a little further back and just shoot really powerful shots. A minion will be spawned for each second where this rage phase is ongoing, and you will have to kill one of them. But listen, you can't just... Okay, you might expect these defenders to drop the dungeon itself, but they don't. They drop the Obsidian key mold in the sign bag. You'll have to get something else to enter the Obsidian Summit too. But some new white bags were intended for this event. Okay, so now, you've defeated the boss and you get a sign bag and you get this shit. What the fuck is this? It hungers for the souls of 10 red demons. We'll have to kill 10 red demons. So the rule is that you have to have the Obsidian key mold in your inventory and get the soulbound threshold. So a personal message will appear in your feed when you've killed the 10th red demon. The passage feeds, it hungers once more, and the description for the Obsidian key mold will change. It feeds, and yet its hunger has not been satisfied. It now hungers for 5 souls of an archdemon. So you'll of course have to kill the archdemon 5 times too. What the fuck? Okay, so now you've killed them, okay? You can finally get to the dungeon, right? Right? No, hell no. This wasn't supposed to be easy, okay? The mold description will change once again after you've got a personal message. It feeds, once more, it hungers for the souls of 3 greater gods. Now, what the heck is a greater god, you think? Well, it's either Oryx the Mad God 2, Best, Not, Gab, Forgotten Sentinel, the Twilight Archmage, Forgotten King, Shadesen, the Advisor, and the Puppet Master Zinko. These are just examples of what these greater gods would be. And about time when you've killed these suckers, you'll finally get the key, which is named the Summit Key. But just a tiny note beneath all of this. The Summit Key can also be purchased in the Nexus for 400 realm gold. What? Are you serious? I just went through fucking hell to get this key, and I can buy it for 400 gold? Okay, I'll just calm down. The Summit portal will stay open for 45 seconds to get everyone into it. I'm not sure how that would work with the current effects of the dungeon appearance stuff. But seeing on the dungeon as of now, it's really unique and quite interesting actually, because there's a lot of new features that hasn't been introduced at all into this game. So implementing this dungeon would also mean introducing a lot of new in-game features. So right before we go into the actual dungeon, I just want to say that you can support this document because this idea was scrapped. It's not going into the game as of now, so if you want this in the game, and you find it interesting, I mean, make a Reddit post, write to the admins, because I can't get to them. I don't have that contact information. So guys, I got a feeling that this video is gonna be long as fuck. So, strap in First, introducing in the status effects, we have the new debuff called Burning, which inflicts 30 damage per second to a player or 100 damage to an enemy. And you will also take 20% more damage. There's also the Purity debuff, which is not the same as the Purification Tone, whereas this doesn't remove debuffs, but it makes you immune to them in a period of time. So let's dive right into the minions themselves. First off, we start off with this beast, Enthralled Swordsman, the front line of Oryx Crusade. In general, I don't have much to say about these enemies other than ouch. It charges the player at medium speed and quickly shoots its blade. The Enthralled Marksman is no less dangerous. It has a paralysis effect on one of its arrows and a burning effect, which is spooky. It shoots out bursts of 5 fire arrows in the back and shoots out really quick venom arrows in between. This I consider one of the most dangerous enemies, since the paralysis effect can finish you off really quickly. So from the Enthralled Warlock, you would expect it to deal the most damage from its bolt, but it actually deals the most damage from its missile, which gives you a burning effect. It shoots out 3 of each burst, and the burning effect totals to 180 damage. The bolts themselves will be shot rather quickly, but move slowly, and only one at a time. The Executioner sort of explains itself, because that goes in and clears everything up if someone gets a paralysis or something. If you get stuck and this motherfucker sits on top of you, you're fucking done. Better kiss mommy goodbye, because this shotgun of 250 damage shots will not be pleasant. It's also the bulkiest of the group with 50 defense and 15,000 HP. The shots armor pierce and gives you burning for 2 seconds, but they're rather slow and doesn't move that far. Bear in mind that these enemies spawn in formations of 5. Usually 3 swordsmen, 2 marksmen, 2 warlocks, and 1 executioner. So that was the first formation of enemies. I consider picking this apart for a whole day, so let's just do it quickly for the rest of the enemies. So I'll start off with the Cult of Pyroclasm enemies, which is a type of enemy found in this dungeon. What I just covered was the basic formation of enemies, whereas these are one of the most dangerous types. They will spawn 4 enemies in each formation. The Magma caster has a generous base damage of 75 and inflicts Cursed and Speedy for 3 seconds. The Obsidian Golem is quite dangerous, shooting out a Magma shield of 200 damage, given armor broken for 5 seconds, and a Magma slash 150 base damage with 5 seconds of bleeding. The Enlightened caster gives you a debuff of 5 seconds of Speedy and 5 seconds of burning if you get hit by either its boomerang or burst, with 100 and 150 damage. Now moving into the weaker types of enemies in this dungeon, which is the third group, the Corrupt Nature found in the dungeon. They function more as a backup to the other enemies to make it more lethal to be in the dungeon. First encounter is the Infernal Wisp, but don't underestimate it. It has a 75 base damage of a Magma Bomb, but it heals enemies within 5 tiles of 1000 HP a second. This is why this is top priority to kill first. The Infernal Sprite, on the other hand, gives armored within 5 tiles, so you'll have to kill these first. It is said that the Fire Elemental is one of the most lethal enemies of this dungeon. It gives a 20% increase of damage of all enemies within 5 tiles. It also stuns you for 3 seconds. So in short, these enemies are a pain in the ass if you don't remove them quickly. Now we'll move into the fourth group of enemies, which are the independent enemies, the Creatures of the Crack. These include Magma Slimes and Ash Worms. When this Magma Slime itself is killed, it will split up into 2 to 4 tiny Magma Slimes, which have these stats. The Ashworm displayed is said to be the most dangerous enemy of this dungeon, which aggressively chases the player. So we made it! This was the final enemy of the normal dungeon, at least. So let's just quickly go over what the tiles do. So this plate's functionality varies from what part of the dungeon you're in, but it's supposed to be stepped on by the player. It will change to a red color when you've stepped on it. So these are the types of magma you will face, dealing 50 to 60 armor piercing damage and reducing the player's speed by 35%. The Risen Magma is before you've entered the interior of the dungeon, whereas the Primal is from there on. This Summit Gate functions as a temporary wall before a player has done a certain action to remove the wall. Yeah, those were the tiles, so let's get into the maps. Interior, exterior. Your journey will begin in the southern part of the exterior dungeon. Here in the Siphon Gateway, you'll meet the crystal laying in the middle. Yup, the battle with that crazy crystal is about to begin, but only if 4 players step on at least 4 of the tiles in the room. Now, this is going to be a little advanced, because at first 4 players must stand on the plates. After 30 seconds, 6 players. After 15 seconds, 8 players, and finally you can summon the boss. You won't be able to kill the crystal before the boss is spawned. Ragnas will appear and a boss battle will proceed, and I won't go in depth with that. You can read yourself to that in the document. All you need to know is that when he dies, he'll spawn the Obsidian Crystal with 200,000 HP. It will spawn Primal Magma and its surroundings, and when down to 150,000 HP, it will start shooting magma bombs dealing 75 damage. When you have finally killed it, it will despawn all the primal magma and you will have a chance of getting the cyan bag and the white bag. So these were the sprites that you weren't happy about. And by now you've probably noticed I just skip over the items, and that's because I'll cover it in the second part I'm making on this Obsidian Summit, because it's a huge dungeon. What you want to do is go in the middle and step on that plate, because the gates to the side rooms will not open until you've stepped on that plate. Around the plate, enemies will spawn, and in the side rooms they will storm in from each side. Not that they will aggressively go towards the middle, but they will if you provoke them. It's much like the shatters. I'm not entirely sure what to do when you get to each of the sides, but you'll have to destroy the brazier there. When you've destroyed each of them on each side, the main court will open once again, those displayed with the summit wall texture. And here you're led into the main boss room of the exterior. Dead center, Fervus, the magma bulwark, will stand with 200,000 HP, and that is what he's capable of. In addition to that, he also has a magma bomb dealing 200 damage. He will slowly start his shot pattern and spawn 3 Obsidian Golems in each of the lava pools. You'll have to kill all 12 of them to push him into the next phase. You might have noticed the 4 plates in the middle of the room, and they will come in handy now, since Fervus, after you've killed 12 Obsidian Golems, will start shooting magma bombs on each of these plates. The pattern he shoots them in will be the pattern you'll have to step according to. For example, if he shoots a bomb on the right, the left, the top, and the bottom, you'll have to step on each of the plates in that pattern. When you've done this, aspects will spawn, a new enemy type. The aspects of Obsidian does not attack, but they heal Fervus for 10,000 HP. If they're not killed before they reach the boss himself, they will push him into his enraged mode. He will shoot 20% faster and spawn 1 Obsidian Golem for each lava pool every 5 seconds. If you still haven't killed the aspects by now after 20 seconds, more aspects will spawn and it will become a complete mess. Like, you seriously have to do it correct the first time. If you kill the aspects, he'll be vulnerable for 10 seconds and you'll have to hit him down to 100,000 HP. And if you don't, tough shit, you're gonna have to do it all again. But you brought your golden sword, you know what you're doing, so you got him down to 100,000 hit points. So he's now in his enraged mode, where he will start chasing the player. Fervus will switch in between invulnerability for 10 seconds and then lose it for 5 seconds. When he's at 10,000 HP, he will start saying out some lines and he will explode into 10 golden stars and drop his loot directly when he is killed. So boys, let's open up this white bag and see what he has got in check for us, and also take a look back at what we've seen of loot in this dungeon. Take a quick look at that, and I'll have to leave the rest for the part 2. These are the possible drops you can get from him. Let's have a look at what the individual items do. ATrapper was so kind to include what these items can be used for as well. First, the dagger that drops from Dividius. This dagger is to be used on low defense enemies, since its high projectile speed can easily take down an enemy. The feat power and fame bonus also suggests this. The cloak itself is quite interesting, since it heals within 3 tiles, making the rogue a team player. The 4 defense and 5 vitality helps the rogue stay alive. Personally, I really like the idea of this item, and the mana cost isn't that outlandish. Moving on to the Ragnas drops. The Ashworm Hide Armor gives a really high defense in exchange for 6 speed. Also fitting, since the additional defense would also weigh a little on the quite squishy character itself. It is also mentioned that it would be of a better use on the Trickster. I see why that is, since the Trickster has a much higher speed and can teleport, but this could be useful in some situations with the Archer too, if you need some extra defense. It's not good for rushing though, so I would recommend to keep it off the Archer too. The Volcanic / Infernal Quiver is up next. As a shared drop on Ragnas, I think it's a worthy opponent, since it gives the enemy a weakness effect for 3 seconds. Therefore, the enemies inflicted with it will deal 25% less damage before defense reduction. Its damage is nothing special, but it gives you 4 speed and 4 attack, so it's a decent quiver. So moving on to the final 2 white bags from Fervus. The bow functions as a crowd cleaner. It has relatively low damage. It gives you 2 defense, but it has 4 shots and shoots really quickly. Really a matter of situational use. Introducing the first ring of this dungeon, and the only ring drop. 75 HP and 6 defense is nothing special, it's alright, but the effect makes you take 15% less damage when below 50% hit points. 15%, that's okay. This ring is not messing around. But neither am I, since this is the end of the video. So stay tuned for part 2 if you want to know what happens afterwards. I don't have the time to finish off this video today. Sorry about that. So it'll be a 2-part. Hope you enjoyed this. Stay shit and boneless and whatever you want.